Everyone thinks they know what makes prison dangerous. They picture violence. They imagine fights in the yard. They assume danger comes from breaking rules or standing up to the wrong person. But inside prison, danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it wears gloves. Sometimes it carries a mop. Sometimes it pushes a cart quietly down a hallway while everyone else looks away. This is a real story. Not about gangs. Not about riots. Not about escape attempts. It's about a job inside prison walls that almost guarantees one thing: isolation. And in prison, isolation is often more dangerous than confrontation. Because the most dangerous job in prison is not what you think. When a person enters prison, they are stripped of many things at once: freedom, privacy, identity, and very quickly, they are forced to learn an unspoken rule that governs everything behind bars. Survival depends on perception. How others see you matters more than who you actually are. Your job assignment, who you speak to, where you walk, even where you stand in line. All of it is observed. All of it is judged. Which is why some jobs are seen as safe, some are seen as neutral. And a few are quietly feared. One of those jobs is the prison orderly. On paper, being an orderly looks harmless. You clean. You wipe surfaces. You move supplies. You keep common areas functional. To an outsider, it might even seem like one of the easier assignments. No heavy labor. No long hours in the yard. No exposure to the kitchen hierarchy. But prison is not a place where danger is measured by physical effort. It's measured by exposure. And orderlies are exposed to everything. Orderlies go where others don't. They clean housing units after lockdowns. They sanitize bathrooms no one wants to enter. They work in medical units, intake areas, and sometimes segregation wings. These are places most inmates avoid, not because they're violent, but because they carry information. And in prison, information is currency. Sometimes it's traded. Sometimes it's weaponized. And sometimes it's punished. Former inmates have repeatedly said the same thing when asked about prison jobs. Kitchen work can be political. Laundry can be tedious. Yard work can be exhausting. But being an orderly? That job changes how everyone looks at you. Because orderlies see things they're not supposed to see. They overhear conversations that were meant to be private. They notice patterns staff didn't intend to reveal. They clean spaces after moments no one once remembered. And whether they want to or not, they become witnesses. There's a saying inside prison: if you didn't see it, you're safe. If you saw it, you're involved. Orderlies don't get the option of not seeing. They are present during the aftermath of emotional breakdowns. They work around people at their lowest moments. They move silently through spaces where reputations are made or destroyed. And the most dangerous part? They're not protected by either side. Orderlies are not staff. They don't wear authority. They don't make decisions. They don't control outcomes. But they're also no longer fully just inmates. They move differently. They access restricted areas. They interact with staff regularly. And that creates suspicion. In prison, suspicion doesn't need proof. It only needs possibility. Other inmates start asking quiet questions. What did you see in medical? Why were you in that wing? What did the officers say? And even if the orderly says nothing, the silence itself becomes an answer. Because refusing to talk can be interpreted the same as talking. This is where the danger begins to shift. Not physical danger. Not immediate harm. But social danger. The kind that isolates you from protection. The kind that removes allies. The kind that makes people step back when you approach. In prison, being alone is rarely a choice. And orderlies often find themselves alone without ever meaning to. One former federal inmate described it this way: the moment I became an orderly, I stopped sitting at tables. People would nod, but no one would invite me over. Not hostility. Not aggression. Just distance. And distance inside prison is a warning sign. Because prison survival is not about strength. It's about belonging. Belonging to a group. A routine. A shared understanding. Orderlies exist in between. Too close to staff for comfort. Too exposed for trust. Too visible to disappear. And yet, many inmates still accept the job. Why? Because orderlies often get small privileges. Slightly more movement. occasional flexibility, sometimes a sense of purpose. But those benefits come with a cost that isn't listed on any assignment sheet, a cost that only becomes clear over time. Orderlies begin to notice something else. They are present during moments when people drop their masks. In medical units, inmates aren't performing toughness. In isolation wings, reputations don't matter anymore. In intake areas, fear is still fresh. Orderlies see humanity stripped bare, and that knowledge changes them. Some become numb. Some become detached. Some carry stories they can never repeat. And some make a mistake without even realizing it. They remember something they weren't supposed to remember. They notice something they weren't supposed to connect. And in prison, memory itself can be dangerous. This is why experienced inmates often warn newcomers, don't volunteer to clean places with secrets. Because secrets don't stay where they happen. They follow people. But all of this is still only the surface. Because there is one assignment that turns an already dangerous job into the most psychologically risky position inside prison walls. A place where orderlies are sent routinely. A place that most inmates never enter willingly. And a place where what you witness doesn't leave you, even after release. It's not the yard. It's not segregation. It's not the kitchen. It's the medical wing. And once an orderly is assigned there, everything changes. The medical wing is quiet in a way that feels unnatural. Not peaceful. Not calm. Quiet like a place where voices have already been exhausted. For most inmates, medical is a temporary stop, an appointment, a checkup, a brief escape from the unit. But for prison orderlies assigned there, medical is not a visit. It's a workplace. And that difference changes everything. Inside prison, the medical wing operates under different rules. In the yard, people perform strength. In housing units, people perform confidence. In work details, people perform reliability. But in medical, there is no performance. Pain doesn't care who you are. Fear doesn't recognize reputation. And vulnerability doesn't respect status. Orderlies in the medical wing see inmates without the armor they wear everywhere else. They see hands shaking during intake exams. They hear voices drop when test results are explained. They notice who asks questions and who stays silent. And most importantly, they see moments that were never meant to be public. Because medical is where reality breaks through prison identity. For the orderly, the job seems simple. Clean rooms, disinfect surfaces, move equipment, restock supplies. But in practice, they are always present, always nearby, always listening, always noticing, even when they're told not to. Former medical orderlies often describe the same experience. You feel invisible, but somehow exposed at the same time. They are expected to act like background noise, like furniture, like part of the building. But they are human, and humans absorb what they are around. The medical wing introduces orderlies to a different kind of danger. Not physical harm, not direct confrontation, but emotional overload. Because this is where people receive news that changes their outlook entirely. Medical is where diagnoses are explained, where limitations are revealed, where long-term consequences are discussed, and prison amplifies all of it. Because there's no comfort waiting outside the door, no family nearby, no familiar environment to return to, just concrete, schedules, and time. Orderlies witness reactions they can never forget. Some inmates stare at the floor in silence. Some ask the same question repeatedly, hoping the answer changes. Some laugh nervously, pretending it doesn't matter. And some don't react at all. Those are often the hardest moments, because prison doesn't allow space to process fear. After medical, inmates return to housing units where vulnerability is dangerous. So whatever they feel in that room, they carry it alone. And the orderly sees that weight being picked up. But here's where the risk deepens. Medical orderlies don't just witness emotion. They also witness patterns. They notice who comes back repeatedly, who avoids appointments, who suddenly stops requesting care. And patterns create questions. Questions that no one once asked. Inside prison, health information is sensitive, not just personally, but socially. Anything that suggests weakness can change how someone is treated. Anything that hints at limitation can affect work assignments, housing, and protection. So inmates guard medical privacy fiercely, even from each other. But orderlies can't unsee what they see. They recognize faces. They remember conversations overheard accidentally. They notice who struggles to walk back to the unit. And once again, knowledge becomes a liability. Other inmates start watching the orderly differently. Not aggressively, not openly, but cautiously. Because proximity to medical means proximity to truth. And truth is not always welcomed. One former inmate described it like this: "People didn't accuse me of anything. They just stopped talking around me." Conversations would pause when he walked by. Topics would change mid-sentence. He hadn't done anything wrong, but perception had already shifted. This is the psychological danger of the medical wing. The orderly becomes a reminder of vulnerability. And in prison, reminders are uncomfortable. But there's another layer most people don't consider. Medical orderlies also interact with staff in a way few inmates do. Nurses, doctors, medical officers. And while these interactions are professional, they are visible. Other inmates notice who speaks to staff comfortably, who receives instructions, who moves freely through restricted spaces. And once again, assumptions form. In prison culture, assumptions are rarely corrected. They are simply accepted as truth. Some inmates begin to wonder, what does he hear in there? What do they tell him? Why does he know so much? Even when the answers are simple, the questions alone create distance. This is why many former inmates say medical orderlies live in a kind of limbo. Not trusted, not targeted, just isolated. And isolation, over time, wears people down. But emotional exposure isn't the only danger. Medical orderlies are also exposed to the mental health side of prison, a side most documentaries barely touch. They clean rooms used for evaluations. They pass by counseling areas. They overhear fragments of conversations meant to be private. They see inmates struggling internally, not outwardly. And this affects them more than they expect. Because when you see suffering every day, and you're not allowed to talk about it, and you're not trained to process it, it accumulates. Quietly. Former medical orderlies often report the same long-term effect. They don't have nightmares about prison fights. They have memories of silence. Rooms after someone left. Chairs still warm. The sound of a door closing. Moments that felt unfinished. And the most dangerous part? They were expected to go back to work immediately afterward. No debrief. No support. No acknowledgement. Just mop the floor. Restock supplies. Move on. Over time, many orderlies adapt by emotionally disconnecting. They stop noticing details. They avoid eye contact. They keep their minds elsewhere. But that detachment has consequences. Because emotional numbness doesn't turn off automatically. Some carry it long after release. They struggle to reconnect. They avoid emotional conversations. They feel distant from others without understanding why. This is why mental health professionals who study incarceration say, the most psychologically damaging roles are often the quiet ones. Not the loud jobs. Not the confrontational ones. The ones where you absorb without release. And yet, the medical wing is still not the final layer of danger. Because there is one more assignment that pushes the orderly role into territory most people never imagine. A place where the risk isn't just emotional or social. It's existential. Some orderlies are assigned beyond medical, beyond intake, beyond general population. They are sent to clean spaces most inmates never see. Spaces designed for separation, for containment, for silence, segregation. And once an orderly enters that world, the job changes forever. When people imagine danger in prison, they imagine sudden moments, a confrontation, a mistake, a single bad decision. But the most dangerous job in prison doesn't arrive all at once. It happens slowly, quietly. Every day an orderly pushes a cart down a hallway, they absorb things no one trains them to handle. They see vulnerability where toughness is expected. They witness silence where strength is performed. They carry knowledge that has nowhere to go. And they are expected to keep moving. The danger isn't violence. It's accumulation. The weight of stories you can't repeat. The memories you're not allowed to acknowledge. The isolation that comes from knowing too much and belonging nowhere. Orderlies don't control outcomes. They don't make rules. They don't decide consequences. But they walk through every consequence prison creates. And when they leave prison, Those consequences don't always stay behind. This is why many former inmates say the hardest part of incarceration wasn't what happened to them. It was what they were forced to witness and never speak about. Because in prison, the most dangerous jobs aren't always the loudest ones. They're the quiet roles that change how you see people, how you see suffering, and how you see yourself. If this story changed the way you think about prison, subscribe for more real stories they never show in movies. Because understanding prison isn't about shock. It's about truth.